All right, hey everyone. I know that the course has been somewhat of a struggle, but it's not too difficult. Hopefully, you learned a few things. But we're ready for this final, and since same format as the midterm, except for this time, I'm going to provide you some code. So I'm going to provide you an MVC project that already has a controller made with a DB context, and as well as a database with some data in it already. The sample here is person. That's not what the final will be, but it will be similar. I'm also going to provide code for the test file. Um, but if you want to follow along with this tutorial or the practice review, what you're going to do is you're going to grab this GitHub link that I posted on econosoga, and then grab the code. Inside of the README file will be the instructions, on basically how to, you know, not how to do this, but the things you should know for the final itself. The final is basically going to consist of refactoring the person MVC class or refactoring a controller of some sort, and then making an X unit test. So I'm going to do this for one or two items in this demo, but I'll leave the rest to you. If you've never used Git before, um, you're going to go to this URL and sorry, if you have used Git before, you can just clone the repo if you want to. If you've never used Git, you shouldn't have to sign up for an account. This is a public repo, and just go click on code and then download zip. When you unload it or uncompress it, just try it out, right? So go to the person MVC project and do .NET run. Make sure it compiles. Make sure you have everything in there, and then just click on the website. You should see the site, and when you click on person, you should see me in there. You should be able to create a new person, whoever it is. That's the first thing that I would do just to make sure it works. The final will be the same way. You'll have to go to Git to get it, so make sure you know how to do that and unzip it. All right, so let's start. Um, Again, you can use the README and go through all of these if you want to. I'm only going to do a couple. If you open up the test, and the X unit test, you'll see this as we call a stub. So I've stubbed this test, and in the final, you're going to have 7 of these, and they all say assert dot equals 1, 0. Now, this is not the test, obviously, that or the unit test that you want to run, because if I do this, um, it's going to fail, right? So your goal is to obviously make this succeed instead of fail the actual test itself. I guess this actually should be equal, not equals. We'll do this again. Yeah, that's better. Right, so this test obviously fails because it expects 1 and it got back 0. In fact, I got to commit this now. All right, so that should be updated. Anyhow, so first things first, it asks you to take out or to refactor the controller specifically to use a service class with dependency injection instead of using a DB context inside of the controller with dependency injection. So this is pretty much the same as assignment 3, and I'll just show you really quick how I would do this. Multiple ways to do this. If you want to use an interface, we didn't teach that in this course. That's for next semester, but you are welcome to that as long as it works and as long as you actually decouple the classes. So first things first, in the person MVC project, I'm going to make a new folder called services. And in here, I'm going to maybe call this person service.cs. Very totally blank file. And for my person service, namespace, person MVC, and then we'll call it services and public class person service. Right, so that's number one. I need to basically do the same thing that our controller does with dependency injection for the DB context because that's the thing that connects to the database. I need to do the same over here because this service class is now going to run our database connection as opposed to the actual controller. So I'm going to make a new constructor called person service, and I'm going to tell it that it will get the person DB context. We'll just call it context like this. And what this will do, if you remember from the assignment, oops, the DB context like this. This is going to inject our database connections into this private read-only variable so that we can use it inside of this service. Sorry, service. Yeah, I guess person service. Oops, like this. As opposed to using it inside of our person controller, right? So again, first things first, make it a service folder, then make a person service. Set it up for dependency injection, and then set our variable to whatever's passed in. And don't forget that we also have to set up our program to use this new dependency injection. I've seen lots of different ways you guys were doing this, but I'm going to use either a scoped service. So I'm going to do this, add scoped, and we'll do person service. That should do it. And I haven't really changed anything in the controller. I just added the one new class. So I'm going to just build just to make sure it works. .NET build. See if I have any errors. I don't think I should. Got a couple warnings. So we can fix those. Oops. We can just make this nullable if we want. I guess it's never used, right? So we'll still have one warning until we actually use this. But for this sample, I'm just going to do one of these. So I'm going to do the add. So I'm going to take basically the functionality from our person controller for adding a new person and take it out of the controller and put it into our service. In fact, let's have these side by side. So if you can take a look, let's see, where is our add? It'd be under create, I guess, right? Right here. Right, so here's our post for create, and you can see we're using the DB context in the controller and then .add person, right? But we want to take this out, put it over here. So I'm going to make a new function called just add person. It's going to take our person model. It's going to use our context to add the person, just like that. And we'll save the changes. Right, and you may want to put this in a try and a catch, just to make it easier to debug. It's pretty simple. Now over in our controller, we actually have to make this service available in our controller, so we would just do private read-only person service. And then we obviously want to have it as dependency injection. There we go. So what I've done here is when Microsoft instantiates this for us, the person controller, when someone visits the website, it's going to inject the DB context and also our person service. At the end of this, I'm not going to get rid of it now because I'm only doing one of these, but we don't want to have this DB context here at all. We want everything through the person service. I'm not going to remove it right now because I'm only doing one for add, but we can have both. But in order for you to get full marks, you cannot use this DB context in your controller. You have to use it in the service class. So now that we actually have the service, we can go down to create. And now instead of using context.add, we just use person service.add. Maybe person service.add person, right? Yeah, there we go. And we don't need to save the changes. And we should await this, I guess. Or is this an async function? Should we make it that? Nah, we'll leave it for now. Just make it simple. Right, so this should work. This should add. And we can just simply test. First of all, again, I haven't done anything with the unit tests. I'm just decoupling the the database transaction from the actual controller. So let's try it. Sorry, it's in the wrong folder. Go back to the MVC site.net run. And then go to your site. And I'm just going to test to make sure that I can create a new one or a new person. It doesn't even matter what it is. Oops. Right. Click create. If this works, it should add, which means our service works fine, right? So the reason why we do this is because we're going to use this service in our X unit test, and it keeps it decoupled from our actual controller, right? So again, in the final, you'll have to convert the entire controller, all of the CRUD operations, add, get, update, delete, into this service. Not too difficult. Just remember, I made a new service folder, then I created a service file. I set it up for dependency injection using the DB context. And then I told my actual program that I'd like to inject person service whenever, it sees it in the constructor. Then I had to go to my actual controller, create a new variable called person service, and then set it in the constructor. That means I can now use person service inside of my whole controller. I only left this DB context in here because I didn't want to change all of these, but you're going to have to change all of these to get the full marks. So that's the first thing I did. Right, so after you do all that, you can do it two ways. I would probably, if it were me, I would maybe do one of these just like I'm doing now and then run the unit test and get that working. Because once you have that, you can pretty much copy and paste everything, right? So, and you have so much time to do this. Anyhow, so here's I'm going to open up my test and, oh, sorry, I realized that I've already set up this temporary database. They call it in-memory database, so that we can run these tests. So you don't have to run it on the real data, and you really don't have to worry too much um, about how that part, not how it works, but setting up the connection. But what we do have to worry about is getting this DB context into our service. So in your assignment 3, we had to do add reference, right, to our project. So this right here. So I've already done this, and I've done it already in the file that you're going to get. So you won't have to add a reference, but I just want you to remember that that's how it works, so that we can actually use person mvc.services, right? And then in our add person, save person to database, we can actually just do something like this. We would want to make a new DB context equals get in memory database context, and we want to make a new service, and then we pass the context into that service, right? So this is, if you think about this, we're basically instantiating or doing our own dependency injection. We're saying we're going to make a context, and then we're going to pass it into person service, which is what we worked on in the person MVC project. And this gives us access to everything like, add person. So what I'll do next is I'm gonna instantiate a new person. And so this should be models.person, I guess, right? Models.person. I think that's what we called it. Yeah, right here. Sorry, where'd I go? Models.person. Then I'll just set the properties. So it was first name. Right, so we have our new person, and then we're going to use the service to add it. So we'll do service dot add person. Pretty simple. And then, so this would be, we call this the act, right? Oops. My autocomplete sucks. Act. This would be a range act. This would be add person. And then we're going to assert. So in our assert, we will, um, you know, check if the person is in here. So we'll do context dot people dot find, or sorry, dot first or default, I guess. Do something like this. I won't bore you with me typing the code. So here it is. So this should now find the person, oops, that I just added to our context, right? So I added it here using the service. Our context is not the database that's in our main project. It's this fake one. They call it in-memory database. Kind of fake one over here, just so we can test the functions. I add the person, and then I say, hey, let me look up the database, go to the people table, get the first or default would be null. Person that equals first name equals hello and last name equals world, which is this one. If this comes back as not null, then our test should work. So if I do .NET test, and I have to change directories obviously to the test folder, but you can see that this would pass the test. And then we can test, and if other things that we want, we could say, we could actually check if the phone number is correct, right? Like, so assert equal stupid autocomplete. Get out of here. Equal 555 in person phone number. And this should also check the phone number got inserted into the database correctly. And that's pretty much it. So that's how we build the tests. Pretty simple. I don't think you'll have any problems with this. Again, this is a quick video, but you do have to do it for all of the items. So I'll say this all again because I know it was kind of jumpy. So you're going to be supplied both projects. They're already set up. The references are there, so you won't have to do too much in that regards. There's no service class. You're going to have to make one, right? So you make a new service, um, set up dependency injection for the service, go to the program.cs file and add a scoped variable, saying that we'd like to use dependency injection for service. Then in your controller, replace all of the CRUD operations with your service. Don't forget at the top, make a new, whatever class it is, person service, and then add your dependency injection into the constructor, and then replace all of the underscore context with whatever it is that you did inside of the service, right? So that would be the first half of the midterm, and then the second half is set up the testing, and you just watch me do that. So you're going to have these stubbed, as I said before, but this is pretty much how you would do it. Relatively simple. I've given 6 hours this time for this midterm, and I think it's way easier than the mid, or sorry, for the final. And I think it's way easier than the midterm. I don't think you'll have problems. I wouldn't leave this to the last minute. I would probably start it as soon as you can. Just get it over with, and that's it. So good luck.